Okay, Alistair, we're now on to this second diagram. Now, could you explain this in detail?
Yeah.
If you wanted to, for instance, point to the screen beside you.
Sure. This is the egg in the middle. And these tubes are, some of them are sort of genetically designed species, like they've been genetically engineered. Some of them are just ones that did...
Genetically engineered by who? Humans?
Oh no, the people that run this are the Greys. So the ones at the very top are the Greys, the ones that we've heard of from numerous different sources. But the actual experiment has other species of ET. It's extraterrestrial. It's not extra-dimensional. It's a fertilization process. So there's an egg in the middle, which is like a very highly prized egg from the best species. And it's like, it's very healthy, and it can produce the most viable offspring. And then the tubes funnel in different sperm.
Okay.
And then basically they're all going to have a fight. It's all set up so that the sperm have a fight and a race to fertilize the egg, and only one of them will actually manage it. The whole thing is designed to facilitate in this process, and the point of it is to make a being which is super. It's to make a super being.
Now,
So
where is this actually happening? Is this happening on a craft? Or
this happens on a spacecraft out in space. These.
Where did you get this information?
This was part of the download. But this was part of the download in Scrubs. So they were just...
This is the download in Scrubs, not the download in your hotel room.
Not in the hotel, in Scrubs.
So this is in the this has been downloaded to you at Wormwood Scrubs prison.
Yeah, and they were asking me to describe what I think is happening. So they put
who's they?
The spacecraft above me, and the two beings, non-humans with the medical clothes on.
Okay.
And the weird, warped thing that punched me a couple of times.
Right. So you've seen that character
me
several times.
Yeah. They froze me. I got punched a couple of times. They froze me. Spacecraft was above me, and
that was a disc or a triangle.
Triangle.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So they were doing a download as well, and the main thing that was being tested. So I got shown an image that looks similar enough to this, but was better because I drew this myself. The image that I saw was. I could see the tubes, like I could see the glass, I could see, the egg and everything all very clearly. Also, it's the weird thing about this isn't just genetic, it's also spiritual. Apparently the consciousness of the egg and the consciousness that would, grow would be spiritually placed as well. So it's like a type of consciousness which has had a previous life, which is also optimum. So it's coming. It's like a consciousness being farmed. So in the sense that we farm animals, they can locate consciousness and farm the consciousness. But in order to be able to do that, they have to do this process where this sucks in a soul. But it sucks in a very powerful soul because it's a super being that they're growing. But it needs a super soul as well to operate it.
And how do they do the soul sucking?
Something called a soul catcher. So it's...
Now, what's that?
Well, this is a type of...
Apart from a British Telecom thing called soul catcher.
Okay. Well, this is a soul catcher. This is a type of soul catcher. It's because it's been designed so perfectly to achieve the end result, it is attractive to a soul. So that the whole point of a soul catcher is something which is attractive to a soul, which makes it go near to it, and then when it's near to it, it sucks it in.
This sounds like the spider's web's description you described earlier about what flies see on a spider's web.
The thing is, everything is kind of related. So it's like, especially holographically. But yeah, it's working with a similar principle with the spider's web. It's so.
So this would be involuntary to the soul. Would not be a good thing for the soul to go to.
Not really. I mean, an example of another soul catcher is something like an amusement park. An amusement park sort of entices people in with its lights. Like Ferris wheels going around, people having fun, all lights and things. In an organised way. And when you see that, you kind of get drawn into it and enticed into it. A soul has it's like it's a consciousness, and it's disembodied, and it's kind of roaming around in hyperspace and all of that, and something like this can entice it.
How does that entice it? What does it sing? Does it send out a signal or some kind of message?
It's actually inherent in what it is, because the egg is so viable and it's going to be a super being. The egg has a type of energy which is attractive. It's a bit like when you look at an attractive person, they're, because they have like better genetics, better immune system, so you perceive them as being more attractive. Because if you had kids with them, there's more chances of the kids being healthy as well. Basically, because this egg is so viable, it has like an attractive force about it, which is picked up on by the soul, and then the soul gets sucked into it as its consciousness, as it grows, and the super soul is needed for the super egg, which is going to be a super being.
I mean, you've mentioned that the greys are the top of the chain here.
On this one, yeah.
Yeah. And there are other ones for other beings?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, because it's military, it's intergalactic military operation. So they need to make super soldiers, basically. But these are super soldiers out in space. These are alien. They pilot spacecrafts and they do missions. And the reason why it's being done by more than one is because it's like a competitive thing. They have to match each other. It's a bit like if one country has nuclear weapons, then if the other one needs to have them as well. If not, so people try to.
So you were shown this in the download by these other beings, but they weren't greys.
No, they weren't greys.
So why did they show you a thing referring to greys?
I think that they are against the greys because they were trying to get me to give my opinion on how they would deal with this particular situation. At first they were asking me what this is, so they showed it to me first, and I was able to look at it in detail. I was allowed to look anywhere, and I had to explain what it was, and I figured out that it was some sort of fertilization process. But after that, they tell you what it was anyway. So, but in the beginning, I had to guess what it was as like a test.
So, and this is after you've had the black goo.
Yeah, but this is years after the black goo. Yeah.
Yeah. So which would imply that I've just had a thought that maybe the black goo is there to
help me to do these kinds of puzzles.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Things. Yeah.
So in a sense, the black goo was deliberately released into the population to get people, or you were deliberately put beside that so you would be modified.
Well, the thing is, these interdimensional beings, they work vibrationally. So if there's a substance which is, even if it's been created by accident, they can still see what its use would be, and then they can hijack it as something that they can use. So if there's people walking around that have strange talents with their mind in their ability to solve problems and think on extremely high levels, then they would use that. They would use that process.
Yeah, it's logic. So is there any further thing you can say about these, the tubes and the center thing?
Well, I've written here is each channel of tube is sending its species' best specimens for fertilization of the most prized egg. The whole process is similar to the concept of the test tube baby. The result is a super being. The egg belongs to the most evolved species, so they take the most evolved, like the one that they can find that's the most evolved. Take a healthy egg, and then it's like a test tube baby type of thing. And what results is a super being, which can be used to do all kinds of missions and complicated things which only a super being can. It's a bit like what we have super soldiers. They have similar.
What do you know of the super soldiers program here?
Well, there was a documentary recently it's called Fight Science, and they've got a whole documentary on super soldiers. I just saw an advert for it, but they're genetically more, they're genetically better than an average person, and they can endure higher levels of pain. They can think on higher levels, and they have ability to control their fear. They're naturally psychic, and they have a natural inclination to become a soldier as well, even when they're a child. And they also get programmed from a young age and chosen, and it's all very covert the way it works.
But this is something that's ongoing, and it's obviously gone up to the adult level here.
We've got the same thing. We're just not on the same level as these guys.
So our test tube babies are effectively the test tube manufacture of super soldiers here is based on the same principles.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And when you mean, of course, does that mean then that our military are engaged with all these other ETs or extraterrestrials?
Well, the thing is, they study these kinds of things and just replicate them. They try to catch up with them. I mean, what our military's goal is to be as advanced as any possible being they come into contact with or hear of contact with. So if there's someone that's had contact with them, they've given a detailed enough description, the military will use that information to try to replicate or match the technology that is explained.
So naturally, that's why the military would be doing military abductions and doing the whole breeding program.
Of course, yeah, that's exactly.
I mean, it's logical.
Yeah, it's why they do it. It's security. They do it for security reasons.
And so, is this? Can you explain how this affects our medical records and our population and our food chain? Because our food is killing us. We're being poisoned in our food system.
Well, the thing is, they are dumbing us down with chemicals, but that's like the main population, the masses, basically.
So, what's the purpose of that? Ultimately, it would appear that they want to control the masses and reduce them. Or do we need the mass population anymore?
Well, they would like to depopulate us to make us easier to control, and also to have more resources, available to the people, the elite.
And so, therefore, they need to depopulate the planet, right? They don't want to get rid of the wrong people.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a problem for them.
Yeah, they can't. Yeah, they don't want to create too much unrest, because there is a lot of people, and they if they were to start going crazy, then they don't want that either. So,
well, I think that's what Hitler found out. It's getting rid of the bodies. I mean, that's physically a problem. So
yeah.
How are you saying that, and on what information do you base this on, that they're depopulating or wishing to depopulate the planet?
Well, they're working with the thing with the depopulating of the planet, but they're also working with mind control and how to dumb us down. And some of it's chemical, like some of it's like in the food, and some of it's just in the media. So it's like hypnosis.
Can you explain those two processes, and on who told you? What's your basis of saying so? Did you just see it on the telly, or did you read Nexus magazine or something?
I don't actually read these publications. I surf on YouTube, and I look at mostly music videos, but sometimes I look at UFO videos, but not that often. My information comes either from the downloads or from my own intuition that I've felt, my own psychic intuition. But a lot of it comes from the downloads.
You said a lot of music. I mean, you're saying the music videos are sort of mind control, or what?
I do watch music videos, and I do get slightly hypnotized by them. But I notice patterns in them, and the reason why I watch them is because I enjoy noticing the patterns in them. Like the movements have specific meanings.
Could you name any pop singers? I mean, Lady Gaga. People
like Lady Gaga,
Britney Spears, and
Spears,
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Country music stuff.
Sorry.
Country music.
Yeah, I mean some of them as well, but I mostly watch pop music, the main chart, just to see different
to study the
different movements.
So are you saying that the pop music is being specifically used and targeted as a mind control population weapon system?
It is used that way, definitely.
Not that I'm putting words in your mouth or anything like that.
No, you are slightly, but it is.
Would I do a thing like that?
No, it is used that way. The music industry is run by, behind the scenes. There are people like the Masons and people like that putting symbols in there, and it's.
Yeah, I think that's fairly evident. I mean, that's pretty obvious.
Yeah, it's very obvious. And
what is the harm in a Masonic symbol in a pop video? What purpose does that serve?
But it's not just the symbol. It's like the.
I mean, they had the Olympic Stadium. Was all pop
has a
yeah.
you know. I mean, the thing is, it has sub-communicated information. So there'll be a specific series of things that happen in the music video, and they all sub-communicate that you're supposed to behave a certain way. It's a bit like a soap opera, like something like EastEnders. EastEnders has a bunch of families living in a square, and they all behave a specific way, and it's all very. They don't talk about UFOs. No one gets abducted by UFOs, and they don't talk about the meaning of life. They don't talk about why we're here. They all talk about very basic things, and it's like gossip, drama, and then some of it's like violence, and someone gets killed, and it's like an emotional roller coaster of drama. But it doesn't ask bigger questions. Basically, it puts you to sleep. So if you've been watching EastEnders, you start thinking this is how life is, and then you copy it. So it's just behavioral training. So you see a certain way of living life on the screen depicted by actors, and then you copy it if you're normal. Most
and
people.
as some media pundits or analysts have determined, that's what our news is as well. It's soap opera.
Yeah, but it's a bit more advanced, the news, because people that watch the news of the evening, they're often a bit older, and the news techniques are very very clever. The choice of words that they use, the body language that they use, and the way that they tell the story, and they're always showing something bad happening somewhere to make you afraid, so that you're. So you've got, because otherwise you'd have less inhibitions. So it's a bit like alcohol makes you have less inhibitions, and then you kind of be more yourself. The news does the opposite of alcohol. The news makes you more inhibited because it makes you afraid, So EastEnders is like, gives you a model of how you're supposed to be in life, and then people watch it from a young age, and they're raised, watching soap operas, and then they copy what they see in the soap opera. It's a very simple brainwashing mechanism, and then the news makes you afraid, and they choose the specific words when they're describing what's happened, so that you follow a specific perception of what you're seeing on the screen.
Are you talking about triggers?
Triggers, yeah. I mean, well, keywords. What I really mean is choice of words. So, for instance, if someone says that they've just had a ceremony, it makes it sound okay, but if someone says they've just done a ritual, it would make it sound a little bit bad. So basically just choosing words in a clever way that control the way you perceive whatever it is that you're seeing on the news.
Okay, well, let's get on to the next picture.
Okay.
Now, what's this all about?
Right. These chaps got involved at the end, and it seemed to be some sort of
this is the end of your Wormwood Scrubs event.
Yeah, the incident in Wormwood Scrubs where I had to go through all these puzzles and answer questions, and there was 3 of them having me frozen there. I got to a point where I said, stop, please stop. I couldn't cope with what I was going through, and then these ones appeared.
What do you mean they appeared? They just out of thin air?
Yeah, basically this stuff appeared first. See these lines, these waves?
Yeah.
They were like in the air, like that, and then they came forward and as part of the waves. And they
were the waves a random wave, like, or were they have signals on them, these waves?
It's basically it's like an electromagnetic thought field. It's like a telepathic thing, and it also protects them as well. It's like a security blanket. I'm not sure how safe they are with their genetics on this planet. But this thing protects them. It's like a security blanket. And it enables them to. I mean, the ones at the top, the waves at the top, are slightly different from the ones in the middle and the bottom, which I've slightly made them a bit different because they're connected to the head. So there's like you can pick up on their thoughts from these waves, and the waves aren't. There's not like one wave next to them. There's waves in front of them as well, protecting them from the front and the back as well. It's like a block. These waves are like a block of waves rather than just.
So it's really designed to protect them
Yeah.
from our environment, which
Yeah.
is got, we got all sorts of radio frequency things. Oh Lord knows what else.
For some reason, they might be a bit vulnerable. They came across as vulnerable. They also came across as very old. In fact, I was informed that they were the oldest known species.
And what are they called, or do they have a name?
Erzgrös.
Ah,
The
right.
Erzgrös.
And how's that spelled?
Well, I just spelt it, ERZ, GRERZ, but the way it was pronounced, it had a weird tone when I heard it, So I'm saying it sort of with an English accent and everything, but they have their own vocal tones, and the pronunciation when they do it is a bit like when you hear someone foreign say something versus someone who's.
So they verbalize in the same frequency range, acoustic sound ranges we hear.
Yes.
Well, obviously you can hear.
But they do both. I mean, they do vocalize, because I heard this very clearly, but they also do telepathic as well. And this thing helps them do their telepathy, this thought.
It transmutates their energy waves to ours.
Yeah.
For want of a very crude term.
It helped them to get here. That when they materialized, this thing came first. So it's a bit like some sort of transportation as well. It's a bit like Star Trek.
Is it a projection, a holographic type projection?
No, I don't think so. I think they really are standing there as you look at them. I don't.
And so what happened?
They intervened and they calmed everything down. They calmed me down, and then they got rid of the three others.
I mean, they said, "Okay, move on." And
yeah.
And what happened then? What was the purpose of their communication with you?
Just to intervene, because they came at a time when I was screaming and saying, "Please stop." That's when they came. So they came to intervene and stop whatever the process was, and everything got stopped, all the puzzles and everything. When these.
In other words, you'd had enough.
I'd had enough, yeah, and this is when they came.
But the important thing, and they responded to that. They didn't persist. The other people didn't persist.
Yeah, no, they were scared of these ones. The three that had me frozen were scared of these ones.
And how did you know that?
I just knew, because they did whatever they said, and I could pick up on these ones had authority. These were the authority. For all I know, they came from the ship, because the ship with the triangle was still above the whole time this was happening, and these these wave things appeared, and then they materialized, three of them. So for all I know, they could have come from the triangle.
Now I'm feeling that. Is there any way that I could assist in communication with this thing, with this video that we're doing? Is there another way that this could be done better?
Yeah, I mean, possibly to stay a bit longer on maybe a specific detail, so that people don't forget where we're at, or maybe not dart around to too many different.
Okay,
tangents.
well let's stick to this and go with it in your way.
So basically, there's a triangle craft above me. I had three beings around me, freezing me, and then when I'd had enough and I was screaming, these waves appeared, and then these three non-humans intervened and stopped the whole process. And then the two medical, the ones with the medical outfits, they walked away, just walked away, and then the other one, which were the one that punched me, dematerialized, and then I was waiting with these ones, not for very long either, and then I stayed there for a little while after it all finished, before just getting up and going home, and I was really achy. I walked all the way home from there, and it was slightly raining. And
what time of night was it by that time?
By that time, it was about, as I was walking home, it was about 3 a.m.
So you had, this went on in real time. It didn't have you weren't sort of away in another place at a different time zone or something.
I got home in the early hours of the morning, and I was aching everywhere, and I got in bed, and I was just messed up from the whole thing.
Any indications on your body or any sort of?
I don't have. I did at the time, actually. At the time, I had rings on my finger, around my finger and my wrist, but they've healed. They didn't heal quickly. It took about 2 years for them to heal.
Oh right. Now, what was the result of the rings? I mean, was something attached to you?
Yeah,
at this time?
when they did the hand surgery, I felt.
I don't think you've mentioned the hand surgery.
Yeah, but basically, when I was on the green with the three, my arm went out like this, and I felt some sort of surgery going on in my hand. There was a technology in my hand, and when I opened and closed my hand, I could feel like electronics. And then there was a ring forming around the finger and the wrist, and the rings didn't go away for a couple of years.
Is there any kind of scar there? Any kind of indication that you could show us?
It completely healed. But I wish I did this around the time, because then I could have just shown you straight away.
And once again, just before we close on this, when was this again?
January 2010.
Okay. So, next one then?
Sure.
I mean, you indicated that it took about 2 years to heal, so they must have healed very recently then, finally.
Quite recently. I mean, it was mostly gone after a year, but by now it's completely gone.
A djinn?
Does it look like a djinn?
I don't know. Djinn, sparkly man in a sparkly suit. So is this
during
Elvis Presley? No?
During, it looks a bit...
Rhinestone Cowboy.
During the experience, these were the points of my body that I felt had the connection. So when the information is downloading, these are the parts of the body which I could feel lighting up.
So this is representing you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it looks a bit like an alien, but, like...
Would you describe these as chakra points? Or something like that?
I would say that they must be similar to the chakras that people talk about in India. However, they're not specifically chakras, but when I had the experience, these areas were lighting up. So I was feeling very strong sensations in all of these areas. I mean, incredibly strong, especially in the chest area. I could feel balls of energy, turning in different parts of my chest and stomach and groin as well. And then I felt little balls in the wrists and the shoulders and the head. The head had quite a big one. Sometimes it expanded, but then it would go back to...
and how would you sense it expanded? I mean, you're not looking at yourself.
It's a sensation of a ball of energy in the head, and it's sort of spinning. And then it sometimes expands, and you feel the energy is bigger. So it's sometimes it goes out of your head to the point where it's all around your head, and then it goes back in. And then when you think about it, you see a white light. So whenever you think about the energy in your mind, it's always just a white thing.
Like a little sphere of light?
A white sphere.
And you'd notice that outside your sphere of vision? Or
just whenever you think about it and you look at it in your mind, it's always the same thing. It's like a white ball. You don't really choose what you see. You always see the same thing. I
mean, would you call it an orb?
It's similar to an orb, but it's in your body, so it's not on a video or anything.
Okay.
It looks like that, yeah.
You mentioned something about the film Matrix. What do you mean?
Well, yeah, large amounts of data can be downloaded and uploaded, like in the film The Matrix. So things from your mind can shoot out into their system, and things from their machines can go into you through these points on the body.
And that's happens all the time. Did that happen to you in the apartment, in the hotel?
In the hotel, it was outside, so it was like outside of my body. On Scrubs, it was I could feel it in my body rather than outside.
Okay. Anything more you want to say on this?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Right. This is just a diagram of the concept of patterns. So if you think about it, the stomach represents emotions. So I've got like a circle there with like an example of like a pattern reading.
Right.
So if you think about it, when you have emotions, it has a specific pattern, and in things like lie detector tests, you see like a graph and then like a needle, making a specific pattern. So they can record all different parts of the body just by having a little clip on the finger, electrodes for the the EEG machine.
Yeah, I think one's for the heart, one's for the head. But
the one for the head.
Yeah, whatever. But yeah, EEG.
So these kinds of apparatus can record down on pieces of paper patterns. So what this is just a visual aid to understand there's a neurological pattern. The main two patterns is neurological and emotional. So if you've got those two as a recording and you've got the technology, you can run that recording on a victim, and then the victim will suffer whatever it is, or have pleasure if it's something good. Then I've had good ones run on me, not just bad ones.
Now, during the recording, it's worthwhile mentioning. During this recording, it's worth a mention. Did you've had a stomachy issue?
Yeah.
Is this anything to do with that?
Yeah, it's probably related. I've had ongoing health problems ever since the black goo situation. However, they've fluctuated. Sometimes I've been very, very well, but I still have slightly strange problems with my health. But it's been on the improve over the years.
Are you able to describe that without getting into too many gruesome details?
Yeah, no, I've just had inflammation of the digestive tract, and for instance, my spleen is a completely normal size. However, it produces a bit more of some specific blood cell. I think it's the white blood cell. Or the red blood cell, and basically, the blood tests, they come back a little bit strange. Like if I had a bigger organ, that's what the blood test is indicating that I have a bigger organ than I actually have. So it's
producing more than a normal organ, that size.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you've gone to your doctor and had medical tests.
Oh, many times, many times. And I've had a brain scan around this time. I went to the doctor, and they knew that I had ongoing problems from the environmental poisoning.
So that's something which was officially recorded in your medical history, that you've had environmental poisoning at that, during that time. Well, the thing is, I didn't go to the doctor during that time because I just endured it, but after, like quite some time after, I've mentioned it to the doctors, and they gave me a brain scan, a CAT scan in Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. But I didn't have any. What was the result of that?
Nothing bad. Everything was fine.
So you finished with this?
Yeah.
Okay, next one.
Okay, this was. The same time, this happened at the same time as the Scrubs incident. I've not done a very good depiction of it because I'm not an artist, but what happened is I was instructed to place my palms in my eyes and put a certain amount of pressure, and I had to keep adjusting the amount of pressure until I found a specific amount of pressure which makes geometric shapes appear in my eyes, in my vision. And then the geometric shapes appeared, and they were all very, like a kaleidoscope when you look through a kaleidoscope. And then eventually they started rushing past my head, and as if I was going through a tunnel. I came out of the tunnel, and this is depicting the tunnel here. And then a man with a big hammer just hit me.
He's a very tall man with a small head. Is there any significance in that?
Well, basically, the man is made of stars. So I haven't done a good. It's difficult to draw stars, but he was made of stars, and he was like the size of a like a galaxy, and I was tiny. I was much even smaller than the relatively, and he had a hammer that was also made of celestial material, and he looked down on me, and then he hit me in the head with the hammer, and then it sent me back through the tunnel, and then I took my hands from my eyes. So, but what they taught me, and I can still do this, when you put a certain amount of pressure on your eyes with your palms, there's all different things that can happen because of the stopping blood flow and everything. But there's sometimes it's little splodges or whatever. But if you get the right pressure, you can make geometric shapes appear, and if you can keep the pressure just right, it starts to turn into stars. I haven't had the same thing happen on this one, but I can always make geometric shapes appear, and then then stars appear. So
you wouldn't recommend that.
I don't recommend people do it because it's
you could hurt your eyes.
You could hurt your eyes, yeah. But when I did it this time in the Scrubs, and they made me do it, they introduced me to this whole. I didn't know that this existed. That if you put slight pressure on your eyes and different pressures create different effects. You can.
I mean, are you simply just causing blood problems? You just mentioned about just simply messing about with your eyes. What's the useful function of this?
Initially, what you're really doing is you're just messing around with blood flow. But there is a point where it's a specific ratio of pressure where it creates geometric shapes, and at that point you're hacking into something. You're hacking your eyes because you're able to see something with them which you can't normally see. So it's like a meditation. It's a type of meditation where you can see something that you can't see any other way, and it's geometric shapes.
So are you being essentially trained to see other worlds?
With this technique, you can. I mean, I'm quite careful with it, but if you get the pressure just right and you hold it long enough, you do start to see things similar to if you were on drugs or something, But
this
it's
is
a
an
very
optical
simple
illusion. This isn't. Can this possibly be useful?
Well, when it happened this time, this was, it was like being in a different galaxy. So it wasn't like just random. It had a pattern to it. But when you do it normally, it's just a way of basically seeing things. So it's similar to a crystal ball, but it's better than a crystal ball because you see much more than you would see in a crystal ball. I mean, it's anyone's guess what can happen with it if you're very adept at using it, because it's a hack. It's just a hack of the body. It's better than using drugs anyway. I mean, there are drugs that have launched people's consciousness out of their bodies, things like DMT and things, and that does indicate some sort of interdimensional connections in the brain which can be triggered, even though it's a drug. For me, I don't think it matters if it's a drug or if it's just natural. It's still triggering the connections and the psychic connections. Okay, this is the last one. They introduced me to death, and they showed me this thing called the never-ending video, and I've had this happen to me a few months ago, so I know firsthand what it's like now, but I didn't at the time when they showed me what this was. I could conceptualize it and I could understand what they were telling me, but I've now actually had this done to me, so I know exactly what it
So you're in continuous contact with these beings.
It happens randomly, and I always hope that it isn't going to happen again. So once it's happened and I've got over it, I pretend that it's not going to happen again. But I mean, it does.
So what are you saying, that you were taken one step beyond death?
Yeah. I mean, this when they first introduced me to this, it was a concept being sort of downloaded into my head. It wasn't done on me. I didn't experience it. But recently, a few months ago, I actually experienced this whole thing. So I know now, on a level of experience, what this actually feels like. But what it is, it's a bit like a blank video screen with like static on it, but dark static. Like a light. It's like a matte black static, and it's got little tiny balls that slightly move around. It's hypnotic, and if you die and you're in the presence of their care, they take.
Who is they?
The ones that run this thing.
And who are they?
The ones that let's click back. It's
so just to make precisely.
These ones.
Oh, those guys. These ancients. These ancient
This is what
beings.
they do. The rings are to signify age. They're very. They've got these weird rings, and it's not the same as our wrinkles, but it means it's it's the same thing as wrinkles. So. Right. What they do is they have like life extension technology, and if you die, they can take your brain and they can basically put it in like a vat, and then they can tune all of the senses which are normally connected to your eyeballs and your body into a machine that makes this thing, which is like just what I call the never-ending video. They that's what it means, what they meant when they explained it. But your consciousness gets tuned into this, for ages and ages, and the technology is, what happens is you start to eventually let go of your previous existence, because you basically it's a way of dying where it's not against your will. So you get put in this machine which enables you to die of your own choice. So eventually you start to just leave your brain and you go into a new life. But before that happens, this starts to mix between you hallucinating your next life. So you'll start to see like an object or something, which is basically, you start to see a soul catcher. So you'll see something which makes you feel happy to leave your current life. It could be anything. It could be a Ferris wheel. It could be a car moving, and it will be something that you're happy enough to leave this one and lose your memory. So the point of this is, that when you do leave, you're going to lose your memory and your personality and everything like that. But before that happens, something will be enticing enough to that you'll let go of your incarnation, and then your consciousness will become you'll become disembodied, your consciousness, and then you'll possibly be caught by whatever the thing that enticed you. So for instance, in the case of the egg, if the consciousness had been in their machine, and then this egg became something that the consciousness was enticed by, it could die in its current body, and then it would go into this one. So it's basically a way of farming consciousness, but they're not very good at it. They're not as good at farming consciousness as they are actual physical, like DNA and bodies and cells and things like that.
Who's they? The ancient beings?
Yeah. Well, the ones that.
So is this essentially? Sorry to interrupt.
The ones that do this are the Greys, but the ones that do the never-ending video are much older than the Greys, and the reason why they do this is because they're trying to control consciousness as well as DNA and things like that. So they use this machine, which is quite compared to the other machines that do all the genetics, this is quite inferior because it's dealing with consciousness, which they're not.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to say that Sky Television, there were a number of staff who saw a thing called a soul catcher. What was Judith Jafar, the B4 organization, mentioned that this was a soul catcher, and it was a black box, totally jet black, and it had sort of barn doors on it that opened up,
right,
and floated along the heights of the studio. This was on a live studio, and it floated along the upper echelons of the lighting grid, and then came down and seemed to scan individuals there, and then the doors closed, and then it floated back up into nothingness, and that was described as a soul catcher.
Well, I haven't often heard the term soul catcher, but that does sound like a type of technology for the soul, because the technology for souls is inferior compared to the technology for embryos and sperm and things like that. Things like that really can be controlled on a high level scientifically, but things like consciousness are very difficult to deal with. So even though they're very old and they're very evolved and they've got to this point, their technology about consciousness, because they're doing it in a scientific way, they're not doing it spiritually. They're not like a yogi talking about reincarnation, like natural reincarnation. They're actually slightly able to what they're looking to do is influence the outcome of the reincarnation process. So they know that consciousness is a material that gets recycled, and it has incarnations like when you use a computer and then it dies and you get a new computer. The way you use it is similar to how you use the other one, even though it doesn't have a memory. They're trying to control the reincarnation process of consciousness, but they're not that good at it.
They're doing this or testing it at British prisons in London.
Yeah, definitely, because they test it on people like us first, rather than because they've got higher levels of intellect and experience and memory, so they're a bit more attached to their bodies than we are. So they use this machine to die, basically. So when they die, they get tuned into this thing, and they stay looking at this thing until they're at a point where they're okay to let go of their body and then get soul caught, like by some kind of soul catcher. And they also they also make soul catchers to increase the probability of a being being reincarnated back into one of their bodies, so they get to be the same species again.
As opposed to a tree or a
as
dormouse.
opposed to a tree, or exactly. So basically, consciousness as a fabric gets they're working with on that level, which is one of the highest levels that you can possibly work at. Because the level where you're working with embryos and sperm and things like that, even we do that in the normal hospitals with the fertility clinics and stuff like that. So it's a very normal level to be operating at. But the level where you're actually trying to influence where a consciousness goes and what happens to it is like one of the highest, if not the highest level. And this is a machine that they use to do that.
It seems that that's the Illuminati trying to stay within a human space-time frame.
Well, they would like to, because they don't want to lose their enjoyment. So if you, for instance, if you're this species, you have a much longer lifespan, your quality of life is much higher, and then you have this death concept, so you have to grapple with death. So they study death, and they study consciousness, and they study all of that stuff, and they've figured out about the infinity thing. So everyone has an infinite number of lifespans, and then there's a natural version of it where you just naturally reincarnate, and then there's a bit of essence that you keep, but they don't like that. They're engineering a form of reincarnation where there's a machine that can influence the outcomes and everything. So this is part one, and then part two is the soul catcher.
Because it's quite interesting, because some researchers have claimed this is what the Nazis have been doing during World War II, and that's what they were doing then, soul splicing.
Ah, okay.
Piggybacking their soul through a spliced soul with another person.
Yeah, I have had visions of souls being mixed together, so you've got more than one in a body. I mean, the thing is, with the infinite possibilities, there's anything can happen. So, and that's another thing that they don't like. They don't like the infinite possibilities. They prefer to control things, and they just want to keep evolving to the point where they can beat infinity and reincarnate, and the natural process of reincarnation.
So my thoughts are, in these closing moments, which we'll have to wind up in summary very soon, is that maybe this black goo is some mechanism which they've introduced to mess about with humans to do this?
Well, the black goo will be connected with infinite consciousness because it's sentient. So it's working on a much smaller level. Things that are on a smaller level have more control over the dying process, but they're operating on a nanoscopic level. So it's very unlikely that they're going to die, but they do die eventually. So then they have to have a technology to make that easy for them and to control the outcome. And things like black goo would be used to make this type of thing, because to make this type of thing possible, you need to be able to manipulate very small matter, like one atom at a time needs to be manipulated. So to connect a brain...
Sorry to interrupt, but that's exactly what the British Telecom Soul Catcher program was. If you look at some of the videos from the year 2000, that's what they want to do. Take every memory, everything of every electrical impulse in the brain and store it.
And then, put you in a machine. So, that's because they're trying to control where you go. So they would hope to, they have, there's cryonics, there's people getting frozen. And what they want to do is hook the brains up to a computer and have a simulation and everything like that. What they're doing is they're just trying to control the outcome of where a consciousness goes. So there's consciousness, it's like a spark. And it's in the body, and it's going around and doing things, and it's gonna go somewhere next, but they're trying to influence where it goes next. And this is one technology that's been created to work with consciousness on that level, because they're at an existential level. They're not at the level of just purely genetics and survival of the fittest. They're at a level where they know what death is, they know what consciousness is. They've answered those questions, because we haven't officially answered those questions yet. So we will. There'll come a point where medical science will explain what consciousness is, and it will be on TV and it will be in the textbooks in school. But we're not at that level yet, but they are at that level. They know what consciousness is. They don't have like mysteries.
So there are people who have suggested that because you can go out of body, your consciousness is not contained in the brain or the body or anywhere. It's contained in you as you leave the body. What about that out of body?
It can be like that. It can be non-local. And the reason why soul catchers work is because it can go out. So what happens with this is this eventually causes you to slightly go out of body. And when you slightly go out of body, you see potential things that you could incarnate into and potential realities that you could go into universes. So the reason why this actually works is because consciousness can go out of the body and can exist out of the body for a certain amount of time, but eventually it incarnates into something because it gets caught by some sort of thing that it naturally sees things and gets enticed by things, a bit like a fly going into a spider's web.
I mean, somebody has suggested, one of our people have suggested that the pituitary gland, I think it's the pituitary gland, it sings in the newborn baby, the baby as it's developing, and once it gets to a certain stage of development, it starts singing. It sends a signal out, and then that's where the soul goes in. Yeah,
because that would be a soul catcher, because it would sing on a specific sound. Frequency, which is enticing, and then a soul that's around would get sucked into it like a fly going into our souls or consciousnesses is like a fabric, and when it does go in a body, but whether it's a fetus, or some other type of being, on a different planet, it gets caught. That's why I call it a soul catcher, because there's something enticing that sucks it in, but it's disembodied before that happens, because it's able to exist disembodied for a certain period of time before it ends up incarnated into a physical experience.
Okay, we're now in the closing stages. Could we give people is there any final message that you want to give? Because some people would be quite disturbed by some of this.
This stuff is the highest level, so it is a bit disturbing.
And black goo in London sewers. Yeah. And maybe other sewers across the country?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So do you flush the toilet twice, or what do you do?
Charcoal helps. So activated charcoal can slightly reduce the problem.
That's like a doctor saying the patient is as well as expected after the head's been cut off.
Sorry?
It's like a doctor saying the patient is as well as expected after the head's been cut off.
Yeah, it doesn't do that much, but
it's not quite. It's sort of a.
It's helped me anyway. Activated charcoal is something which helps with things like sewage, because it doesn't harbour that sort of life.
Activated charcoal.
It doesn't harbour that sort of life. So if it's
a thing that you use for poison gas.
If it's present in the environment, it limits those sorts of things from.
So what do? You put a block of you put it in your toilet bowl
Well, you can do, but the main thing is you can take it, or you can brush your teeth with it, and it reduces the harboring of those kinds of life forms, and also it's good for things like oil, because the black goo is something which thrives in oil. So charcoal is like, it's kind of like the opposite of oil, and it creates an environment which isn't conducive to that life form. All the other life forms that it latches onto, like such as viruses and bacteria and things.
And finally, just closing message for people. Have you met any other people or any other messages you've got you want to say?
Keep evolving, and keep your mind open, and keep thinking on these kinds of levels, so that you can transcend, because otherwise you're going to be stuck with the way that you use your body is similar to the way that you use a computer can improve. So if you think on higher levels consistently, you'll develop a soul habit. So your consciousness will have the habit of thinking on those levels. So even regardless of the fact that you lose your memory, you will be able to continue being a certain way, even though you don't have, memory or personality continuing forward. And also know that you are infinite consciousness, operating a body that has a computer, the brain, and try to always remember that, and don't become mechanistic, because that's what they want. One of the main paradigms that they put forward is the mechanistic paradigm, where you're just a biological robot. They want you to believe that because it's scary to believe that, and then it also limits your consciousness. And if you realize that there are other dimensions, and you've got consciousness fabric as well as a body fabric and a brain, then you can be open-minded and wake up and stay awake, rather than fall asleep into the mechanistic paradigm, which is the scary one that they want you to believe. They don't want you to have a spirituality, because then you're operating on the highest level, which is the one that they eventually get to, which is the consciousness fabric.
Good guys and bad guys, who are they?
Good guys and bad guys. Everyone is kind of a good guy and a bad guy at the same time. So for instance, these ones, even though they do good things, they still have a military personnel and a military operation because of security. So there are other species, it's all politics, so there are other species doing the same technology, do it for the same reasons, and then they're doing it as well. And because they've got slightly different cultures, they can be enemies just purely because of cultural differences. So it's not like one's bad and the other one's good. They're both good and bad, and because they've got cultural differences, they've got barriers. So you've got to bring the barriers down, and you've got to settle differences. So two different cultures need to start to learn the differences, and then become friends. It's a bit like England and America. If we were enemies, it would be very bad for both of us. But we've got some sort of similar culture, so we're able to have the special relationship. It's possible for any groups to have a special relationship, if only they could bring down the barriers that are caused by the cultural differences.
Well, Alistair, Martin, thank you very much for giving this information to the wider public. And God bless, and safe home.
Thank you.
And we'll see you on the Ammach project, Joanne.
Thank you.
At another time.
Okay.